In 1862 to 1867, the Freedmen's Colony was in full operation here on Roanoke Island. When they arrived on Roanoke Island, they were considered contrabands or slaves. And they were like property of the Union soldiers.
The able-bodied men were all employed and given rations and employed in building a new fort up at the north end of the island. And once the word spread, thousands of slaves came to Roanoke Island. By 1863, or late 1863, there were so many blacks on Roanoke Island that the Union federal government decided to form a colony on Roanoke Island, a freedmen colony. Reverend Horace James was in charge of that freedmen colony. They formed schools and hospitals and had teachers that would come down from the north and teach the kids to read and write. In June of 1863, President Lincoln signed the law that allowed blacks to enter the Union Army. Most of the able-bodied men here on Roanoke Island went right into the Union Army. They formed the 2nd and 3rd all-colored brigade here in North Carolina.
From 1862 to 1867, there was 561 buildings that the Freedmen's Colony members built here on Roanoke Island that were homes, churches, and schools. They had the Whipple School, they had the Briggs School, and the Cypress Chapel School. They had more schools back in the 1800s than they did when I was growing up around here. But during the 1864, when all of the men had gone to join the Union troops in fighting, their wives and children and old folk were left there with the understanding that they would be taken care of. But by 1864, 1865, things changed. The Union troops had won the war, so they didn't need us anymore. And so they decided to take back from us what they had given us 4 or 5 years prior. My ancestors are part of the Freedmen's Colony. Most of my ancestors were already born and living here on Roanoke Island, but some of them came from other areas seeking safe haven. My great-grandmother was Alice Ashby. Great-grandmother Alice had 4 children, and one of those children was my grandmother Lila. Lila Ashby was probably one of the best business women on Roanoke Island. Her main job was making crafts, quilts and pillows, and different things to sell. She was the best geese picker, and from the feathers from the geese, she would make pillows and mattresses and quilts. But my grandmother found a way to stay home and raise her children by making the quilts and the blankets, by opening up a thrift store. But what she was famous for was her tourist home. We call them bed and breakfasts now. She called it a tourist home. But not only was Lila Ashby and her family, but the Tillets, which was my husband's people, my mother's people were the Manns and the McLeases, and they were all part of the Freedmen's that settled here, was either born here or settled here on Roanoke Island. So I am pleased to tell everyone that I am one of the descendants of the Freedmen's Colony of Roanoke Island. It was born in my blood to always keep your head up high, to know what you're talking about when you talk, and to be nice to everyone. Believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and get that education.